The Middle East is on fire. Last night, the United States attacked Iranian nuclear facilities, officially joining the war. Iran responded with missile strikes on Tel Aviv. Tehran also announced retaliation against U.S. forces in the Middle East. Most bases are on high alert. The world is also watching the Strait of Hormuz with concern, as its blockade, announced by Iran, could lead to a significant increase in oil prices. Bunker buster. The largest and most powerful penetrating bombs in the world have hit their targets for the first time in combat conditions. They were built for this very purpose. They were designed to penetrate underground bunkers in Iran.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
At 1:30 a.m. Polish time, American B-2 bombers attacked the largest underground nuclear base in Fordo as part of Operation Midnight Hammer. From submarines, the U.S. Navy fired 30 Tomahawk missiles, which struck two other installations in Natanz and Isfahan. An hour and a half later, the U.S. president announced to the world that the United States had officially launched operations against Iran's nuclear program.
The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon.
According to U.S. and Israeli authorities, the attack was a complete success. Do you remember that from the beginning of the operation, I promised you that Iran's nuclear facilities would be destroyed sooner or later? That promise has just been fulfilled. Iran, however, maintains that the damage is limited and that the uranium stored in underground bunkers was transported to another safe location a few days ago. We are going through a sensitive period. You yourselves are witnesses that your brother's operations in the airspace are continuing and depriving the Zionists of security. But thank God, we see that despite the bombings, the unity and cohesion of the people is growing every day. This is truly a divine blessing. Both Israel and the United States are calling on Iran to surrender and begin negotiations. Tehran, however, rejects any ultimatum and promises bloody retaliation.
Of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate drive of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
According to announcements, Iran may strike U.S. bases in the region. These are located in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Syria. Political commentators in the Iranian pro-government media are already calling for this. The U.S. president has clearly stated that he has committed this great crime against the Iranian people. From this moment on, Iran does not recognize any red lines. The Islamic Republic of Iran now considers all U.S. military bases in the region and all 40,000 to 50,000 American soldiers stationed here to be legitimate targets. However, the move that analysts have been warning about in recent days may have much greater and more tangible consequences for the world. This is the possible blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, through which up to 30% of the world's oil is transported every day. In recent days, the price of oil has risen sharply. It is almost certain that after the U.S. attack, there will be further increases on the markets. If the strait is blocked, the price of oil could rise to as much as $100 to $120 per barrel, which could lead to a global crisis. The Iranian parliament has just approved the blockade of the strait. The final decision will be made by the country's Security Council.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
It is also unclear what Iran's allies in the region will do. Militants in Yemen and Lebanon have already announced attacks on U.S. forces. China and Russia have condemned the U.S. attack, while Turkey has warned against the conflict spreading to other countries. In turn, Americans are warning Iran's allies against risky moves.
As President Trump has stated, the United States does not seek war. But let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened. Iran should listen to the President of the United States and know that he means it, every word.
Iran has called for an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council. It has also threatened to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran's allies, mainly Russian politicians, suggest that Iran could obtain such weapons from its partners as a reward for its military cooperation to date. The conflict in the Middle East may affect oil prices in the near future. This will likely translate into higher fuel prices at gas stations in Poland. It will be up to the state-controlled Orlen to decide whether the entire cost of market unrest will be passed on to the consumers. One of the key locations for the transport of oil from countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates is the Strait of Hormuz. This is a narrow waterway through which up to 30% of the world's oil supplies are transported. A few hours after the U.S. attack, reports emerged that Iran could temporarily close the strait. In response to information from the Iranian parliament, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appealed to the Chinese government in an interview with Fox News. Rubio assessed that China would lose out if the strait were closed, hence the call for Beijing to advise Tehran against this move. The pilots at the controls of the radar-evading B-2 bombers carried out their mission perfectly, completely taken by surprise. Iranian air defenses most likely did not fire a single missile at the enemy.
This is a Fox News alert.
The news of the American attack immediately became the most important news in the U.S. It has also been on the front pages of American newspapers since the morning. U.S. enters war against Iran. U.S. warplanes strike nuclear sites in Iran. The U.S. president has warned that the operation, codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer, may be just the beginning of a larger military engagement by the United States. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Americans have over 40,000 troops in the Middle East, as well as aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines. However, the use of this powerful arsenal is not obvious. Public opinion polls show that Americans are reluctant to send their soldiers to another war. Only 16% of those surveyed want greater involvement in military action, while 60% are opposed. Another war in the Middle East involving the U.S. is also sparking protests among President Trump's closest allies.
And I'm a big supporter of Israel.
Yes.
And I'm telling people, hey, if we get sucked into this war, which inexorably looks like it's going to happen on the combat side, it's going to not just blow up the coalition, it's also going to thwart what we're doing with the most important thing, which is the deportation of the illegal alien invaders that are here.
When asked by reporters today whether the White House wants to overthrow the Iranian government, which would inevitably involve sending American troops, the Secretary of Defense played down the situation.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program.
Donald Trump can claim success for now. He destroyed or seriously delayed Iran's nuclear program by sending only fighter jets and missiles without losing a single man. The question is how and whether the regime in Tehran will respond now. The next phase of the conflict with Iran will also be the subject of the NATO summit in The Hague, which begins on Tuesday. The United States has already called for greater involvement of European alliance countries in the Middle East. What will happen to Spain? European leftists are asking. For 7 years, the country has been ruled by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's socialists, but his position as head of government is shaky. Not because of mass migration and crime on the streets, not because of high energy prices and the scandalous blackout that occurred a few weeks ago. The opposition is calling for new elections because of corruption in the ruling party. It is an unusual sight. Police officers in uniform and plain clothes enter the headquarters of the Spanish Socialist Party, which has been in power for 7 years. They are there to secure data storage devices containing the emails of party baron Santos Cerdán. Among the accusations against him is corruption in public procurement. Officers entered the Ministry of Transport for a similar purpose. Politicians are left with no choice but to put on a brave face.
Máxima colaboración con la justicia.
We are cooperating 100% with the investigators. The Socialist Party is transparent, and the Socialist Party was against corruption long before it entered government. The evidence gathered by the police is completely contrary to the values of the socialist project and requires close cooperation with the police. Santos Cerdán resigned a few days ago, threatening the stability of the ruling coalition. However, Pedro Sanchez, the favorite politician of the European left, plans to stay in office. He claims he didn't know about the corruption of his close associate. I want to apologize. Until this morning, I was convinced of Santos Cerdán's integrity. The corruption scandal may prove to be the stone that starts an avalanche. Spaniards are fed up with left-wing orthodoxy. The state authorities do not oppose the influx of African migrants and are restricting property rights. The so-called ocupados cannot be removed from illegally occupied premises. The final straw was the blackout. In April, Spain was plunged into darkness when the country's energy system, based on wind turbines and photovoltaic panels, stopped working. Will there be a change in power?
Right now, the government has not a clear majority in parliament. That majority in the past, during the last months, was weak. We had no budget bill enacted for 2 years, so the government has not a clear majority yet. Now with these corruption scandals, this majority is even weaker. So I would describe the Spanish politics right now as an end of a cycle, the beginning of a new electoral cycle, probably with new elections soon.
As of today, Prime Minister Sanchez refuses to call early elections, but the situation is dynamic.